Hello, friends. It is with great pleasure that I am here to talk to you today in the second meeting of Jesus' Friends with Chico Xavier and his legacy. That the theme of this meeting is Time for Healing with Chico Xavier. So we will be talking about Chico, and we have chosen a theme related to health, the general theme of this meeting. And that's why our talk today is Chico Xavier, Messages that Bring You Health. We started to prepare this study, reminding ourselves of Chico Xavier in the moments in which we were with him. They were very few, but they were very meaningful to me and to my family. I can tell you that because in the first meeting with Chico Xavier, which was in Pedro Leopoldo in the 80s, I was still part of the youngsters group, the precursor, and I was invited to be there by Dona Nenê, Mr. Martins Peralta, our guides, the vice president, the president, and all these people had a strict relationship with Chico Xavier since the beginning of their task in Spiritism. So we went there and we felt very well. We felt so happy. I even remember that my wife at the time, she wasn't my wife, she was only my girlfriend then, and she said, well, you know, getting closer to Chico is like being in a place that is fresh, with fresh air, because the vibration is excellent. So we went there and greeted him. We followed the meeting, we followed the messages that were psychographed on that day. And later we had an indirect contact with Chico related to health, because my first daughter had a problem, a health problem, and Geraldinho, our great friend, he brought some fluidized water to us that has brought great results to the health of our daughter. And this recipient had an incredible smell of roses, and this smell of roses remained in our homes until the water was finished, because he recommended that my daughter should take 2 spoons of that water every day. He also sent a small golden medal of Our Lady of Grace, and so that she could wear it, and that was an indirect contact with Chico, and we are very grateful. Then in the 90s, we were with Chico once again, invited by Mário Barbosa, a great friend of ours from Pará, and we were with Chico in Uberaba, watching the meeting, being part of the event, and following the role there, and following the words that he would give to everyone that would come to him. They were words of love, words of care, and very meaningful. I remember that people just greeted him, and other people, he felt that the presence of that person was because of a need. So there was a man, he was an elderly man, and he mentioned that a phrase that had to do with being not good on the inside, but good on the outside. So you didn't actually know people from the inside. So we followed Chico, and we had an autograph from Chico as well, and we had a great time. This is how Chico is. We were there for some time. We had an autograph by Chico, and like I said, and we had a great impression of this work that was being done at that time. Of course, the task did not begin there only. We followed the whole meeting, the psychography, the letters, and of course we feel very touched with the work, because it is a dignifying work. And Chico was an example of love, an example of a person who was there doing a personal struggle to be able to give people Jesus's messages, like Jesus's apostles did. So we have these references from our personal experience with Chico, and through friends, Dona Neném, Geraldinho, we've had many different kinds of memories from these messages that came from Chico. And I also have to mention our professor of mediunity, Iago Rocha. Everything that we know in terms of mediunity, we owe him, and we are very grateful. He used to talk about Chico, and we have some of these cases in Chico's book called Mandado de Amor, Love Mandate. So if you have any time, you can read that. We have selected today the messages theme, messages for health, because besides the work of Chico Xavier as a person, because he as a person was an example in terms of mission, strength, through his books we get that. We see that his messages are carried with wisdom, deep wisdom, which is brought by the spiritual friends, but also by the pure soul that Chico Xavier had. So we are going to show a few phrases that we selected based on health, because it's a very important theme to all of us. It's very important to our families. And if we know how to work with our health, we will be able to make good use of our time here, because this is a blessing, a gift from God. And the longer we can stay here on earth, the longer you can stay here, Chico said, the more we will be able to use these experiences for our development. And if we leave Earth without having increased our debts and trying to, on the opposite, pay some of it, we will be happy. So we selected here a few messages that we are going to present to you, and that have an important connotation, a connotation of help. So we gave this study the title of Chico Xavier, Messages that bring you health. Okay, the first message that calls my attention is from a very beautiful book. It is a compilation by Carlos Bacelli that mentions a few excerpts from the words of Chico Xavier, that reveals Chico Xavier as he used to be in the gospel by him. So we have here two items referring to that, 312 and 313. And what does it say? It says, in reality, every disease in the body is a process of healing for the soul. The disease is like a drain of our imperfections. Unconsciously, the spirit wants to throw away what is strange to its own psychism. So we could stay here and talk only about these phrases for a long time, all the lecture, but we notice here that what Chico reminds us is that what we consider something bad, which is the disease, and we are even angry at it, but the disease has a reason in our lives, and this knowledge will free us. So if you know the truth will free you. And this knowledge that Chico brings us is there, it is in his life. Chico himself has been sick as well throughout his life, and he gave us an example of how to deal with diseases or sickness. This is a healing process for the soul. So it is very important for us to see that the disease has a role. So let's check if we see our problems, our health problems like that, because the disease can actually bring you benefit, and you have to realize that. We have to be patient with it, and we have to clear our minds, clear our psychism, as Chico Xavier has said. He also mentioned in this next excerpt in the book The Bridge by Fernando Worm, chapter 3, he says, what makes us hurt makes us sick. And from there, we have to interpret whoever offends us as someone who is sick. If we gather that offense and respond to it, what we will be doing is keeping with us this trash bin that has been thrown at us. Christ's teaching is a true mind therapy. Emmanuel says that you shouldn't write a receipt for evil, not even charge for good. It's a little difficult to talk about that because it is so clear. The message that Chico left us is so clear, and it makes us reflect. Chico says that anything that hurts us deeply makes us sick. And what can we do with those anguishes that are within us? You have to forgive. You have to clean your heart. Like Emmanuel said, you shouldn't write a receipt for evil. No, you shouldn't write a receipt for evil, and you shouldn't charge for doing good. Chico is saying that with all his experience. He's bringing us a practical example. He says, if you do that, you are keeping the trash bin that has been thrown at you. No one wants to keep a trash bin close to you. This bin has to be recycled. What the contents of this bin have to be recycled. So Chico clarifies these points for us. Are you keeping anything bad inside your heart? Are you keeping past events from long ago still in your heart, torturing you? Aren't those events that might be making you ill? This is the word of Chico about this subject. Now let's see what Emmanuel says in the book Pensamento e Vida, Thought and Life by Emmanuel, which is an incredible book for us. This book brings us knowledge that we actually need to have. So, about this theme, he says, let's not forget that only the right feeling can bring the right thought, without which the soul becomes sick for the lack of inner balance, printing a somatic disease and perturbations in the body. So here Emmanuel is being very objective. He's mentioning our mind attitude, our mindset that has to follow the correct feeling. So Emmanuel is saying, if you don't take the steps to have the right kind of feeling, your soul will become sick. And as Chico has said, our physical body reflects what is in our spiritual body. This inner balance is what we have to search for all the time. So you, friends, know that, of course, all of us sleep sometimes. We have failures, we fail. But even though, what is important is that we persist, go back on the right track. We go back to the track that takes us straight to health, to inner health. And this is what Emmanuel brings to us, the importance of, in our everyday lives, the importance of struggling to follow in the correct feeling and the correct thought, the just thought, wishing our brother only goodness and not keeping anguish against our brother or anger, because this will make us ill. So, with these words, these introductory words, we tried to find other texts by Chico Xavier that are referring to health or connected to our theme, which is time for healing. So we separated a few excerpts about questions that were made to Chico Xavier that clarify questions, doubts that people have, common doubts that people have. It's like a frequently asked questions. And some came from interview books, and we checked on the answers that Chico gave people about health and our condition to face disease. So first, we found a text in which Chico talks about a mistake from a past incarnation. So many times the origin of the problem. So this excerpt here is from the book Laws of Love by Chico Xavier, first chapter, The Spiritual Causes for Diseases. It's also by Emmanuel. And the question that is made is, the mistake from a past incarnation, can it influence the present incarnation, predisposing the physical body to diseases, and how? This is an interesting question that I'm sure we would like to make to Emmanuel. And he says, most of the diseases have their deep cause in the semi-material structure of the spiritual body. Once the spirit has acted wrongly in this or in that sector of the evolution, the spiritual body suffers from the imbalance that predisposes it to different kinds of diseases according to the organ, the internal organ that suffers from the disease. So Emmanuel here confirms what Chico comments in the two first phrases that we have talked about. The deep cause of the diseases is in our semi-material body, and he makes it clear that all these causes have been originated by us when we somehow hurt our spiritual body through our attitudes. And these attitudes will eventually create this imbalance, which is an involuntary movement from our spiritual body in our organism. And so, that's why we have different kinds of diseases. So, this topic that Emmanuel shows us clarifies some of the doubts. Then, we will see that regarding a past reincarnation, that is something that we have done, but what can we get in the future? So we looked for a question that has been presented to Chico as well, and that clarifies this point. So How can we prepare the phase before reincarnation? This is in the same book, Laws of Love, in the first chapter, for the spiritual causes for disease. So the second question: what does the spirit do before reincarnation in order to improve itself? So we have seen that through our human actions, we of course leave marks on our perispirit, and we need the incarnation as an opportunity, one way to be able to pluck the evil from its root. And through the disease we can do that. We can clean somehow the mistakes that are in our perispirit, because it is a physical body. So Emmanuel answers, before reincarnation, we ourselves, in being completely responsible, we analyze the vulnerable points of our soul, and we, of course, try to advocate in our favor the concession of physical impediments that in the right time will help us avoid making the same mistakes which we have made before. So all of us have the opportunity, maybe not always the condition to choose incarnation, but we have the opportunity, because higher spirits deal with that, work for that help us to program reincarnation so that we can have some success in this reincarnation. In the book called Light Missionaries, the chapters that are about the reincarnation of Sigismundum, because in those chapters they show this process of reincarnation. And the higher spirits, because they have higher consciousness, moral, and understanding about the spiritual understanding, they program details of your incarnation, including what may happen to your physical body. There is a case in which a spirit comes close, and when it sees the spiritual model of his physical body, he says, it's too perfect. Let's do something here, because I don't want to be subjected to vanity, this kind of problem in my incarnation. So this person asks for a little change in the programming of the future human body, so that this person can avoid, this spirit can avoid the difficulty of coping with vanity. So we see that disease also comes from a programming in the spiritual world. When we are reincarnating, many times we ask for a disease. We ask for a disease so that we can have the benefits from its experience here on earth. Some friends that have been with Chico comment that it is a blessing to leave your body in a very prolonged disease, which is the opposite of what we think. People say, no, I want to, leave my body when I go. I want to do it fast. But he explains that when the person has a prolonged disease, the person has an opportunity to get detached from the things of the earth and get closer to the things of the spiritual world. Because we see that spirits who have recently left their bodies and are still attached to earth and to material things, they have problems. So Chico clarifies that this can be minimized through prolonged disease. And we see that with on another book by Emojacó, when he mentions his disease, that he was little by little getting detached from material things. So going back to the phrases by Chico, he says also that What is the world to us? And this is an Emmanuel phrase he will say in the book Justice Divine, Divine Justice. He will say that the earth has a function, and what we have to do when we are here. So this excerpt we have extracted from chapter 48, Diseases of the Soul, and Emmanuel says, it is necessary to recognize that all of us incarnated spirits or disembodied spirits who are serving here on earth, facing the volume of debts that have been acquired in past existences, we are sick, working for restoration. The world is not just the school, but also the hospital in which we heal our imbalances, our regenerative in our regenerative reincarnation through suffering, through sweat. And they work as compulsory medication. And he goes on. So he says, you have to let compassion rectify in yourselves old evils that you tolerate on others. If anyone hurts you, what you have to do is not hurt back, because you have to understand this is part of the process of the modesty that is obscure. So Emmanuel, every time we study Emmanuel, we study Chico Xavier, we study the words of Emmanuel through Chico, we realize that this power of synthesizing, this power of bringing what is essential to us, he has. He shows to us that all of us here on earth, we are all sick. And we are working to improve our health. There is no one here on earth who is not some way in debt. So what does this represent to our daily lives, to our diseases, our difficulties, these things that happen to us? So he says, reinforcing what he had said, that the world is not just a school, but also a hospital, a place where people heal their imbalances. We go back to our first phrase by Chico Xavier that says that the disease is for us one way of plucking out our evils. And it's not just a school, the world. The world is also a hospital, because our physical body, our experience here, will make it possible for us to regenerate our perispirit in the difficulties that we bring from other lives. And he says, even though maybe we complain about this experience, he says that suffering and sweat are a compulsory medication. So he's saying, yes, it is medicine, compulsory medicine. I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to give me some medicine that tasted very bad because it was cod's liver oil. And I remember that I hated it. I didn't like it at all. I hated it, but it was good for my health. So sometimes the medicine that will do you good maybe is the one that you don't want to take. So in this final part, he teaches us the way that we have to follow here. He says, if anyone hurts you, you have to adapt that gesture to an obscure modesty that this person is still holding on to. So if we are hurt by someone, we have to understand this person as someone who is sick as well. this person is sick of the soul, and we have to act like Chico says. When I said at the beginning, are we going to keep the trash bin that has been thrown at us? No, he says that we have to let go of anguish, of anger. We have to let go of this litter that is thrown at us. So there is another confirmation of this in this chapter 48 from the book Divine Justice that deals with the sicknesses of the soul. We are just here, showing you a few messages related to this subject, but we want to recommend to you so that later you can study and meditate on these words. Emmanuel also talks about the life of the mind, the importance of mind's life. Emmanuel says to us in this book called Thought and Life, chapter number 28. Look how interesting. He says, no one will be able to say that any sickness is related to the process of elaboration of your mind's life, but we can guarantee that the processes of elaboration of your mind's life keep a positive influence on all the diseases. There are some diseases that have undoubtedly an important role to purify the spirit. Some of them are born with the human being and follows this person until this person's death. So in this book, Emmanuel is going to confirm and is going to highlight what later he mentions in the book Divine Justice that I have talked about. We have in our mind's life the influence over all the diseases, and that's why it is important for us to clean our mind. This is what Emmanuel says, how important it is for us to be able to clean our mind and not breed bad things in our mind. So the spirits also see that very clearly. When we talk to spiritual friends, we have comments that tell us that they realize the higher spiritual spirits, they realize what is the problem that we are going through, and they realize because they can see what we value, which is reflected in our physical body and coming from the spiritual body. So all of us can manifest that through our thoughts. So, like he says, that all diseases, they have this purifying role for the spirit because they give us a new path, a new spiritual path, and we have to balance it through the experience that we have here on earth. And Chico mentions many cases like that some people who have committed suicide here in the physical world, they come back again for short reincarnation to be able to finish the cycle that they had to fulfill here on earth. One way, for example, to balance the spirit that has been unfortunately somehow damaged by this action of suicide. So sometimes people in despair, they go through a process like this, but they are not aware that they are bringing to themselves more suffering. They are increasing the pain, not solving it. So it is a campaign that we have to do to help people understand life after life and the consequences of acts like that. Chico, throughout his life, has worked for that, to make it clear for people. And here in this book, Emmanuel reflects on that. The fact that some diseases, they have this role of purification of the spirit. And they come sometimes with the person at birth and follows this person throughout his or her life. So there's an institution here in Belo Horizonte where children who go there, they have chronic diseases, chronic problems, and some people thought of minimizing that, doing lobotomy. And this question was brought to Chico, if this should be done. And Chico said, no, because this would hinder the spiritual development, this purification process of that person who was there, who was in that body. Because that incarnation for that person and the suffering that it took, and of course that parents also suffered because they had to be with that person who was suffering, this was actually a blessing. It was ratifying its perispirit for new reincarnation. It is as if he could be going to a purifying chamber so that he could reorganize his or her own spirit to a new life. So that's why this disease or this kind of problem, a physical problem, a mind problem, may have this role, may play this role, and has to be understood as a purifying role. So this excerpt that we have selected comes from Thought and Life, chapter 28. So now let's go back. Another question that people had and asked Chico and asked Emmanuel, it's about coma, when people go into a coma. I am sorry about the size of the text, but I included it here because this explains a lot to us. So the question is, this question is from the book Plantão de Respostas, and the question is, what happens to incarnated spirits whose bodies remain months and sometimes years on a coma? So it is a common question. If you have anyone in your family that is on a coma, in this state, we know that there are institutions that keep many people in this state, many people who have suffered accidents, and many families who suffer with that, of course, because of this process this person is going through. And the answer given was, your state will be in accordance with your mental situation. There are cases in which the spirit remains as if he was imprisoned to the body, not leaving it until he permits receiving help from the spiritual benefactors. They are people who are, in general, very attached to material life and who do not accept the situation. In other cases, the spirits, in spite of still remaining with some sort of connection with the physical body through its perispirit, they have relative kind of freedom. And on many occasions, when they come out of the coma, they describe the scenery that they have seen and the beings they have been in contact with. It is very common that after these experiences, these people start to see life with new eyes, reevaluating their inner values. And under any circumstances, the spiritual plan always makes an effort in an attempt to help. That's why prayer is so important. Balance, the correct and brotherly friendly word when you are transmitting peace in important talks, so that there are more conditions to work towards goodness that is directed at this time both to the one who is ill and their families and doctors. There are many issues being clarified here, and we will see that throughout Chico Xavier's works, that the spiritual benefactors are taking care of everyone. And we also see the great deficiency that we have here in this world in being able to deal with spiritual issues, spiritual education. There is a lot missing there. We have to be prepared. Just like we get prepared with physical exercises to be healthy, we have to be prepared in terms of our mind. We have to get detached from material things so that we can be freed when we are going to be disembodied. And spirits make it clear that many leave the body when they have the opportunity, and this is explained in books about scientists that analyze these facts after the coma. It's not an exceptional thing. There are many statements about what happened during the coma. But he comments here that in any circumstances, the spiritual friends are helping us. So we have to pray for this person. We have to talk to this person and say good things. Try to encourage this person. Talk about improvement conditions, evolution conditions on spirituality. And this is the message that Emmanuel leaves to family members, doctors, and the person as well. And this is very important. We have many important statements in Chico Xavier's works. In one of them, this person suffers an accident and goes through a coma. And her friends explain that that period is a period to prepare this person to be able to leave the body, so that this person is more balanced when this person is going to leave. So after this coma, people start realizing that it is a blessing from the spiritual world, so this person can be prepared for disembodiment. It's not to be seen as something bad, but also as a blessing. Aren't those details interesting? They are very little, many little details, but they are very, very interesting. Another aspect is about people who are ill at home. So in this book, Ceifa de Luz, he says, keep in your own home as much as you can the relatives that you have which are going to probation. Don't send them to exile. Support them the way they show themselves with their needs and struggles which are marking their existence, being sure that all of them are treasures from God, in tasks under your responsibility, facing the fact that you have to assist and supervise, as the messengers of God will do to help you. So we can see here that many times in our care, many relatives come to our house, need our care, because they're suffering from different sorts of diseases. And we have to reflect, wouldn't these moments be moments in which we have to use them in order to find balance, in order to help these people, so that we can perhaps somehow review problems that we have had in the past with them. Wouldn't this be an opportunity for us to have these difficult cases, people with probations, under our roof, so that we can somehow give them love and perhaps help us clean our own past? So this statement by Emmanuel says that the messengers of God, the spiritual messengers of God, are there supervising these cases as well. So let's think, let's meditate when this happens to us so that we can be prepared. And how can we prevent disease? What does Emmanuel say to us about prevention? Because if we can somehow prevent, we might avoid bigger evils, bigger problems. So he says in the book Laws of God, chapter 1, which is Spiritual Causes for Disease, there is another question where he says, the question first was, what does Jesus say to us so that we can work against the evils of the soul and the body? So what warning does Jesus give us so that we can avoid the soul and the body's evils? And Emmanuel brings us his wisdom, saying that we have to find the distance and close causes for the diseases. We find the reason why the teachings of the Spiritist doctrine make us consider with a more severe manner the Master's warning: pray, pray, and be aware, so you will not fall into temptation. So Emmanuel brings us here a few words that we have to find the causes which are distant or close from the diseases that we have now. So he's trying to show us what we have thought about, that we have to reflect upon the problems with our peri-spiritual body from our past reincarnations and diseases from nowadays. Many times they are motivated by our acts, as Chico used to say. Sometimes we cause them, we create them. So he warns us, you have to pray and beware so that you do not fall into temptation. So it's very important to pray. It's very important to be aware. And how do you do it? Through attention, through reading, through study. And we can observe and reevaluate what we do on our daily lives. If we have done something wrong, we have to take a step back, apologize, and not keep anguish within our heart. And these are the words of Jesus. You will not fall into temptation if you pray and if you are aware. And what about the therapies, the physical, spiritual therapies? This is also a curiosity. So the questions come from this book called the Plantão de Respostas, the Answer book, because it is a very meaningful. Considering the degree to which people deserve the cure. Is this cure long? Will this cure take long? Or will this cure be fast, be soon? The process of the spiritual treatment is relative, and healing itself is the proof of the patient's merit. Sometimes the cure occurs many times quickly, the patient conquers the cure in a definite way by searching for its inner strengthening through a moral reform and the practice of charity. Remembering that Jesus always said to us, "Go now and don't sin anymore." So we are also responsible for being cured. Many people remind us of the power of the fluidized water, the prayer that we need, friends work for our improvement. But of course, there are processes which do not lead to cure. We remember two cases. Once there was a woman who made a lecture that accompanied the process of healing, and this woman asked the spiritual friends if they cured all diseases, and they said no, because those who had an influence on the karma, they couldn't heal. Those who didn't, they could act on that. So we have seen that also in another report on the treatment of Arigó by Dr. Fritz. The lady that followed, she also made a statement that when this person came to be treated with Dr. Fritz, her spiritual protector told him that that person was going to be disembodied soon. There was no more treatment for that person. So Dr. Fritz had a code he shared with her in these cases to ask her for a spiritual message. And so, dear friends, time goes fast. We have reached the end of our talk today. I thank Jesus for this opportunity of being with you and living here. My thank you very much, Chico Xavier, for all your work, for your example, and for all the time you have donated to us. And may we all be also deserving of your support. So be it.